What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode, an episode that I'm very excited about of the Stand Up Triple podcast. I am back. My name is Brady Penn, and I'm very, very, very excited to be bringing this podcast back in a lot newer form. For those of you that have followed the podcast, this was always an audio only type deal, and fortunately, I was able to get some better resources, find a software that I'm familiar with, get a camera, and now I'm able to bring you the full experience here with a video and audio podcast. And I'm really excited for what that means. Just kind of a more clean format here and a more efficient way of doing things. I feel like we're going to talk some baseball and we're going to talk some basketball, the two kind of main things that are going on right now. I'm not very well versed in the XFL. I'm not sure how many people in my audience that I know of want to hear about the XFL. So we're going to get going here. We're going to start it off with baseball, starting off with my Atlanta Braves losing 6-5 today, swept by the Blue Jays, and just really not a good series for the Braves at all. And I'm not going to say they're in trouble because they still, I believe I read, the Braves still have the largest division lead in baseball, which just shows how spoiled Braves fans, including myself, are. Kind of the sky is falling after getting swept. I remember a few weeks back we got swept by the Astros at home, and I was like, oh my gosh, we suck. And then immediately we reeled off another hot streak. But I will say there are a few areas of concern with the team, including the fact that they're so feast or famine with the home run ball. And we saw this weekend the Braves stranded a lot of runners on base yesterday in the Saturday game that they lost. They had bases loaded with nobody out, didn't drive anybody across, had multiple innings today, leaving guys on base. That's not obviously a success for winning baseball, or a recipe for success and winning baseball games, I should say. But the bullpen also, man, has just been a big area of concern for the Atlanta Braves this season. Raisel Iglesias was the guy that came in today and blew it. And granted, not all of it was on him. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. almost took him deep to tie the ball game up at 5 apiece. Instead, he got aboard, and then Iglesias walked a guy, gave up an infield single because of the way the infield was shifted, and then a ground ball by Austin Riley finished the game off 6-5. And it's a shame because this was really the first time this series that the offense showed up. Got shut out, complete game shut out by Chris Bassett on Friday night. Yesterday lost, I believe it was 5-2, perhaps. Marcell Ozuna, go figure, was the only guy that brought any offense with a 2-run homer. And yeah, just a forgettable weekend for the Braves. Ronald Acuna had another leadoff home run today. Ozzy Albies continues to rake from the right side. I advise you to look up Ozzy Albies' career splits and this season splits from the left side versus the right side. But the Braves, disappointing series up north. They head to Texas this week for a series against the Rangers, and then they come back home against the Mariners this weekend. So hoping the Braves can turn it around. In other NL East news, Bryce Harper and the Phillies got into a bit of a scuffle today. A Rockies relief pitcher, I believe Daniel Bird, got an out against Bryson Stott, the Phillies shortstop, and kind of clapped his glove and eyeballed the Phillies dugout. And Bryce Harper took exception to that. Bryce Harper has kind of been showing his temper here in Colorado this weekend. And as someone I got to put my stance out there right now. I used to be a huge Bryce Harper hater when I was younger. And, being on a division rival, sometimes he'll still get to me, but all in all, Bryce Harper, amazing baseball player and really good for the game of baseball. But yeah, last night we saw him, a fan was trash talking him, and he went yard and then came back, called the fan a loser, was pretty fired up. So then today came out of the dugout, looked ready to fight somebody. I mean, I saw a hilarious screenshot of Dinger, the Rockies mascot. He was throwing his arms up in horror at the scene. And then Bryce Harper used the word loser again, called the Rockies a loser organization, quote, every one of you. And was not happy about that. Phillies get blanked 4-0, which makes the Braves loss a little bit easier to swallow, but that made headlines there. And then also in Major League Baseball, Mitch Keller strikes out 13 guys for the Pirates. And I've got his numbers pulled up right here in just a moment. Mitch Keller, so far this season, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, a 2.99 FIP, which for those of you who don't know is an advanced metric fielding independent pitching, and it's a lot better way to judge a pitcher than ERA or a base stat like that. And to be honest, if you use stats like earned run average and batting average to measure a ball player, or at least only those to measure a ball player in the year 2023, you're just wrong. I know a lot of people don't really like analytics, but that's just the way the game is going. And analytics, I feel like, tell a lot of the story. And 2.99 FIP, 7 innings of shutout ball today with 13 strikeouts for Mitch Keller. He helped the Pirates avoid the sweep from the Orioles. And I got to check on the standings real quick. The Brewers are a game and a half in front of the Pirates now, who were one of the big early season surprises. They might be coming back down to earth as of late, but man, Mitch Keller has been really, really good. And you know who else has been really good is the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're starting to catch fire out there. They actually passed the Braves today / this weekend for most wins in the National League. The Braves sitting at 25-15, Dodgers sitting at 26-15. So obviously the season doesn't end in May, but if it did today, Dodgers would finish a half game ahead of the Braves for that home field advantage spot. And obviously we know the Dodgers and Braves have had some really good battles over the last few years. As a matter of fact, this coming week, I believe, not this coming week, but the week after, the Dodgers come to Atlanta for a 4-game stretch. Freddie Freeman will return to Truist Park for the second time. That'll be exciting, but I want to talk about just the Dodgers, not keep prepping the Braves into everything here. The Dodgers have won 8 of their last 10. They swept the Padres today after taking 2 out of 3 from them last weekend, and that's 5 out of 6 wins against the Friars since last weekend, May 5th. And I mean, that's a rivalry that we've historically seen the Dodgers own. I know the Padres knocked them out in the divisional round last year. And the Dodgers just continue to beat up on the Padres, who are now 19-22, which is a bit disappointing for them, honestly. You look at, they added Xander Bogaerts this offseason. They got their first full season so far of Juan Soto, who is starting to heat up a little bit lately, but had a really disappointing start of the season. Manny Machado has started off the season cold. Those are some big names. They just got Fernando Tatis back. He's been hitting the ball well, but man, the Padres just not looking the way that we thought they were going to look earlier on in the season. Jake Cronenworth, Ha-Seong Kim. I mean, that team had some really big expectations. And don't get me wrong, like I said, it's May. They can still turn it around and end up becoming a really good team. We might be talking about the Padres being in the World Series 5 months from now. Who knows? But to start the season, not great for them. Shifting gears here now to the NBA. You see this guy behind me, Jason Tatum. Him and his guys knocked off the 76ers 112-88. You want to talk about another lopsided rivalry, and that's exactly what that is. That Celtics-Sixers rivalry. I mean, the Celtics just seem to always beat up on the 76ers, and the Sixers had them on the ropes. I mean, the other night, Sixers dominated the Celtics in the Garden in Game 5, had a chance to close the series out at home against the Boston Celtics, and looked like they might do it. But then Jason Tatum, I mean, his last 5 quarters of basketball have just been absolutely phenomenal. And that started with that fourth quarter in Game 6 against the 76ers. He erupted, and he said, hey, look, I'm not going home. And he said the same thing today. Jason Tatum had a record 51 points, record for a Game 7, I should say, a record that only stood for about 2 weeks. If you remember, Steph Curry had 50 against the Sacramento Kings a few weeks back in Game 7 against them. And that record only stood for 2 years. I remember Kevin Durant had the record with, I believe, 49 points against the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 7 in the 2021 Eastern Conference semifinals. And what's funny is that's 3 times in the last 2 years that record has been broken. And before that, the record stood since 1988. It was Dominique Wilkins' record since 1988, and now it's been broken 3 times in 3 years. Jason Tatum now, taking a look at his numbers in Game 7s in his career, 28.8 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, 48% for the field, and 50% from beyond the arc. Jason Tatum, when the game is on the line, when the season is on the line, I should say, is just a killer, and he is one of the top players in the NBA. I know everybody knows it. Sometimes I feel like Jason Tatum's going to have his playoff stinkers, but if you get to a Game 7, you get to an elimination game, Jason Tatum is not going to let you down. And that's a big reason that I see the Celtics having success in this coming up series against the Miami Heat. You've got the Heat and the Celtics coming up here. I believe game one is on Wednesday night. Both those teams split the regular season series 2 apiece, and this is now their third time in the last 4 years meeting in the conference finals. If you remember back in the 2020 NBA bubble postseason, the Heat took out the Celtics in either 6 or 7 games. I can't remember how that series ended game wise. I obviously remember the Heat went on to the finals and lost to the Los Angeles Lakers in 6 games. We'll talk more about them here in just a few minutes. But last season, the Heat and the Celtics went 7 games. If you remember, Jimmy Butler nearly had the Heat with another win, threw up a heave from the beyond the arc and almost knocked it in, but it was not meant to be. The Celtics moved on to the NBA Finals and lost to the Golden State Warriors in 6 games, and that one after having a 2-1 lead. And maybe this is the year that one of those teams breaks through and is able to finish it off in the finals. I mean, that's twice now that we have seen these two teams make it to the finals against each other and fall short in 6 games against the Western Conference opponent. I think it's going to be a hard-fought series. Like I said, 2-2 in the regular season, but I have to go with the Boston Celtics in 6 games. I think they're going to be too much. I think they're deep. I think the Heat are kind of playing with house money here. And I mean, we saw them. They didn't look as good as they did against the Bucks, against the New York Knicks. And obviously the New York Knicks are an inferior opponent, in my opinion, to the Boston Celtics. And that Bucks, I don't want to take anything away from the Heat, but that Bucks series, you're playing against an injured Giannis and just a Bucks team that was out of sort. I mean, we've seen them fire Mike Budenholzer since then, which I'm not sure I fully agree with. And actually, speaking of fired coaches, I saw reports earlier today that the Sixers coach, Doc Rivers, former Celtics coach, his job was supposedly on the line in today's game. And if those reports are true, man, it might be the end of the Doc Rivers era in Philadelphia, falling short once again in a big game. But I mean, you've got to have your players step up in those games. James Harden was scoreless in most of the fourth quarters of this series. I can't remember the exact stat, but there were multiple literal goose eggs in the fourth quarter from James Harden in this Celtics series. Only averaged 22 points per game throughout the series. And Joel Embiid didn't have his best game either. He had a couple low scoring games, including today, did not have a great game. And that when you have an MVP on your team, you expect him to do what Jason Tatum did in this game today, and he just didn't show up. The Celtics didn't show up, or the Sixers, I should say, didn't show up. The Celtics definitely did show up, but I mean, the Sixers, for them, you lost last year in the conference semifinals to Miami. You lost the year before that in the conference semifinals to Atlanta. You lost the year before that to who was it that year? I believe it might have been Miami. They lost to the year before in the first round, and it's just not been a good go of it. Before that, lost to Kawhi Leonard in the conference semifinals, and it's just you cannot have that if you're Doc Rivers and the Sixers. That might be time for a change of direction. I don't think that James Harden's going to stick around. I honestly think he might go back to Houston from everything that I've seen. Maybe go play with Ime Udoka, and they could end up with the number 1 pick and get Victor Wembanyama. Who knows? But the Sixers, it might be time to change some things there. You're going to keep Joel Embiid around. He's your MVP. But I don't think anything else is untouchable, even Tyrese Maxey for that matter. I think the Sixers, I'm not going to say they need to have a fire sale or anything like that, but I do believe they're going to look for a new coach this offseason. I think Doc Rivers is out of there. I think James Harden is probably out of there. And at that point, you got to start looking around and seeing what you want to do. Maybe you look into a trade for, say, Damian Lillard or somebody like that, but I really don't know if the Sixers even have the assets to pull that kind of trade off. So switching gears, like I said, I think Celtics in 6. The other conference final series, the Nuggets and the Lakers, another series that was 2-2 in the regular season series. However, every matchup came in January or earlier, and as we all know, the Lakers made a flurry of moves at the NBA trade deadline, including Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell, who has been instrumental for the team. Obviously, Austin Reeves didn't have as much of a role. Lonnie Walker, who was a hero in Game 4 of that Warriors series, he wasn't there at that point. And this is a different Lakers team than we saw earlier in the season. But the thing is, both teams, it's interesting, both teams were 2-0 at home in the regular season series. The Lakers winning both games in LA, Denver winning both games over there at their place. And I really, truly do think that the big X factor in this series is the center matchup. We can talk all we want about LeBron James and what he's doing, which is incredibly impressive. I'm not sure that I think that LeBron James is the number one guy in the Lakers anymore. But if he's not, he is as good of a number two as they come in the NBA. You saw what he did the other night, 30 plus points, either triple double or near triple double. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but in a game 6, an elimination game to send the Warriors home at age 38 and year 20, I mean, that's just crazy impressive. But I think Anthony Davis is the real key to this Lakers team and what they are trying to accomplish. And looking into his matchups against Nikola Jokic, AD averages 25.6, 8.6 rebounds, and 2.6 assists against Jokic. Meanwhile, Nikola Jokic versus Anthony Davis, who we all know is an all-world defender, 18.6 points, so sub 20 points right off the bat, 9.7 assists, and 5.3 rebounds. Actually, I believe, flipped those 5.3 assists, 9.7 rebounds against Anthony Davis. And that matchup is the one to watch. I do think the Nuggets are on the verge of a breakthrough. Obviously, they've had some disappointment in the past couple of postseasons. Lost to Golden State last season, lost to the Lakers back in the 2020 NBA bubble, and lost to the Phoenix Suns in the conference semis back in 2021. And it's Nikola Jokic, for a guy that was nearly a 3-time MVP this season, honestly, in my opinion, should have been a 3-time MVP. As weird as that sounds for a guy that you don't necessarily consider the best player in the league, I'm not sure I'd put him over a Steph Curry or a Jason Tatum or somebody like that. Nikola Jokic is as good of a big man as they come. And that's a guy who, if he doesn't get it done this postseason as the 1 seed with the home court advantage, with the kind of chip on his shoulder of getting snubbed from that MVP, at least in his opinion, and the opinion of the Denver Nuggets and their fan base, I mean, you start to have some narratives come around this guy if he starts to not be able to get it done. I mean, the furthest that he's made it so far is the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers. Obviously, this is another rematch from 2020, that NBA bubble. We'll talk more about that here in just a second. But I mean, you start to think, is this guy someone that can win in the postseason? Is he a guy that you trust to go down the stretch and finish off these tight games against the LeBron Jameses of the world, against the Stephen Currys? We did just see him destroy the Phoenix Suns. He got his revenge on them from a few years back. I mean, the Suns had no chance at halftime in that game. And that's a team with Kevin Durant. That's a team with Devin Booker. I know Chris Paul wasn't playing in the series, but that's an impressive series victory after thrashing the Timberwolves in round 1. We'll see what the Nuggets have. And I really think another key to this series is what happens in game 1. The Lakers' recipe to success has been to steal one of the first 2 games on the opponent's floor. Matter of fact, both times it's been in game 1. They took game 1 in Memphis and then took game 1 in Golden State. Obviously, went on to win both of those series. And right now they look unbeatable at home. So that road win is even more crucial and even more of a hit against the team they're playing. I mean, we saw the Warriors weren't able to get anything going in LA, neither was Memphis. The Lakers still unbeaten there, but we'll see how they do in Denver. Obviously, that interesting nugget, you could say, both teams going 2-0 at home. Jokic against the Lakers this season, averaging 23 points, 12 assists, and 9.8 rebounds. AD against the Nuggets, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. And back in the 2020 Western Conference Finals, Jokic, that was the year before he won his first MVP, averaged just under 22 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, 5 assists a game. AD had 31 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists a game. So obviously Anthony Davis, he figured something out about Nikola Jokic. Maybe on both ends, he holds Jokic historically to lower than his scoring average, lower than his assist average, and then AD is getting buckets on him. I mean, I know Nikola Jokic is not the best defender in the world, and a lot of what he does is predicated on what he's able to do on the offensive end. But Anthony Davis has given this guy consistent work. But Nikola Jokic this year in the playoffs has just been a different animal, averaging over 30 points a game, almost 13 rebounds a game, and 9.7 assists per game. And Jokic, his worst game of the playoffs, he shot under 30% against the Wolves. Still finished with 28, 17, and 12. So Nikola Jokic has been a man on a mission. He does have a healthy Jamal Murray alongside him. But the question is, are they going to be able to take down the Lakers? I feel like the Nuggets may be the better team, but the Lakers just seem like the hottest team in the league right now. And honestly, they might have the most depth of any team remaining, either them or the Boston Celtics. And to be honest, I'm kind of leaning Lakers in this series. I'm going to go with Lakers in 7. And obviously, as I said, both conference finals are rematches from the 2020 NBA bubble. And, there's people on both sides of things that say, oh, well, the bubble was fake. Oh, you can't say the bubble was fake. And now there are people kind of victory lapping on social media that are talking about, oh, well, this proves the bubble wasn't fake. And while I'm not one of those people that just thinks the bubble doesn't count or anything like that, like, it was a real postseason. It was a real tournament that was played. The Lakers came out. They were the champions. They played better than anybody. I'm not saying the bubble is fake, but to make the argument that this year proves that everything in the bubble was valid, it was the exact same thing. Bubble players remaining from each of those teams. The Lakers have 2, Nuggets have 4, and the only 2 for the Lakers that were on that team were Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Dennis Schroeder was on that team at the beginning of the season. He was not on the postseason roster. The Heat, 5, technically 6 guys were on that team, but one of those 6 is Udonis Haslem, who, come on. So 5 guys for the Heat and then 5 guys for the Celtics. And that includes Robert Williams, who got 10 minutes a game that postseason. So I'm kind of in the middle of the fence on that one. I'm not sure the bubble was the exact same thing as a real NBA postseason, but I also don't think it was fake or a Mickey Mouse or whatever you want to call it. So conference finals predictions for me, I've got the Celtics in 6 and the Lakers in 7. In other NBA news, Ja Morant was caught flashing a gun on Instagram Live. Multiple insiders are saying they believe that Morant could face a lengthy suspension from the NBA or from the Memphis Grizzlies, who already have suspended him from all team activities. And I mean, come on, like, what are you doing? In the past 12 months, we've seen Ja Morant, multiple instances of him flashing a gun. He allegedly assaulted an underage male, a 17-year-old. A lot of these things are alleged. I want to put that out there. I'm not putting these on the record. Oh, this is a fact. Oh, get Ja Morant. I think Ja Morant's a great basketball player. I'm not sure he's the most conducive player to winning basketball if you look at what the Grizzlies are able to do when he's on the court versus when he's not on the court. But I digress from that. We've seen him allegedly point a red dot from a gun at Pacers staff members after a game in Indiana and allegedly threatened a mall security guard, and then got on Twitter last year and told someone that it was, quote, free to feel how hollows feel, which is a reference to shooting a gun, shooting somebody. And I mean, Ja Morant's just got to get his act together. He's a guy that, you've made it to the NBA. You've got $200 million at stake, and you don't need to be ruining what you've got going for you. There are so many guys in that hood life, in that lifestyle, that would kill to be in the position, literally would kill to be in the position that you're in, and you're risking throwing it away by flashing guns and trying to live a lifestyle that, quite frankly, I don't think Ja Morant really lives. I think that he seeks approval. I think he found the wrong group of people to surround himself with, at least since making it to the NBA. And it's really sad to see. And I hope that somebody can pull him aside and get his act together, whether that's a veteran on his team like Steven Adams, whether that's his dad, T. Morant, whoever it may be. They need to get things straightened out with Ja Morant, because they do have some good young players. Or Ja is one himself. You've got Jaren Jackson. You've got Desmond Bane. You've got a decent foundation there in Memphis, but you're going to throw it away trying to live these things that you're not. And I think that somebody needs to have a serious talk here with Ja Morant. Well, that's about it for today's show. Not a whole lot going on aside from the NBA, which is now winding down. Only 4 teams remaining. And then we're starting to enter the dog days of summer for baseball. I mean, not a whole lot of NFL news to be talked about right now. Nothing on the college football landscape of things. And so we are bound to get a couple exciting series here in the NBA. I've got the Lakers in 7, Celtics in 6, and I'm excited to see what happens. I'm really excited more than anything, though, to have this podcast back up and running in a different format and hopefully grow my audience here and get my takes out there. You see my boy Jason Tatum behind me, proud supporter of the podcast, I'm sure, and very proud of his Boston Celtics today with a 51-point performance and a Game 7 victory to send them to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's about going to wrap it up today from our show. Officially welcoming you back and saying goodbye from the Stand Up Triple Podcast. I am Brady Penn, and goodbye.